Sinomach HI International Equipment Co., Ltd. Operation and Maintenance Instructions for GTY160 Bulldozer. Dear customers, welcome to buy Sinomach GTY160 Bulldozer. For your better using experience, we will introduce you the operation and maintenance instruction of Bulldozer GTY160 in particular details. Sinomach is committed to bringing you the most comfortable working experience and maximum benefits. The video is divided into 4 parts. Number 1, the working principle, structure and function of Bulldozer. Number 2, proper operation and precautions. Number 3, maintenance period. Number 4, simple troubleshooting. The working principle, structure and function of Bulldozer main parts. Working principle. The engine power is transferred from the engine flywheel to the torque converter cover wheel. The cover wheel and the pump wheel work together. It turns the turbine by pressure oil so as to turn the turbine shaft. The turbine shaft power is transmitted to the transmission input shaft through the universal joint. According to the load changes, operate the transmission control valve, so that the transmission gear power transmitted to the end of the bevel gear. The transmission route from engine to torque converter to gearbox is divided into left and right directions by 2 bevel gears. The steering clutch mounted at the end of the bevel gear shaft clutches the power from the gearbox to the final transmission and controls the direction of power. The steering action can be achieved by operating the steering control valve, cutting off the power of the steering clutch which need turn to one side. The turning radius is controlled by the steering brake. The power of steering turning clutch has been decelerate and transferred through first stage gear, second stage gear, third stage gear and transferred to the sprocket. The sprocket is turned and driven the crawler, finally the bulldozer walking realized. Structure and function of main parts. Main frame. The main frame is mainly composed of central transmission box, arm and inner shell. It is the assembly foundation for all parts. Front engine hood. The front engine hood is connected with the main frame, which used to protect the water tank, lifting cylinder and related accessories assembly. Water tank. The water tank consists of the upper water chamber, the chip and the lower water chamber, used on cooling the engine system and transmission system. Engine. It is inline, water-cooled, 4-stroke, direct injection, turbocharged diesel engine. Rated speed, 1850 rpm, rated power, 120 kilowatts, 160 HP/1900 rpm. Engine is the power source of the whole bulldozer. Flywheel shell assembly. PTO device is installed on the flywheel shell. When the engine is turning, the engine power is transferred to all PTO gears through the intermediate gear. Convert the mechanical energy to hydraulic energy. Torque converter. The GTY160 uses a single-stage, single-phase, 3-component hydraulic torque converter. When the machine on different load, it automatically converts torque by hydraulic power of torque converter. The safety valve and control valve on the torque converter are used to guarantee the internal pressure of the hydraulic torque converter to achieve the requirements and smooth power transmission. Universal joint assembly. Hydraulic torque converter power transmitted to the main parts of the gearbox. Transmission assembly. This series gearbox is designed by planetary gear transmission mechanism. It is combined by planetary gear system and disc clutches. There are 3 speeds forward and 3 speeds reverse. The 5 disc clutches in the planetary gear system are used to make forward or backward happen. They are hydraulically combined under the action of the variable speed valve. Gear shift pump. Type, gear pump, rated pressure, 2 MPa. Gear shift valve. The variable speed valve assembly is composed of pressure regulating valve, quick return valve, pressure reducing valve, reversing valve and speed valve. The variable speed valve is responsible for the clutch required oil supply and pressure protection of transmission. Steering pump. Type, gear pump, rated pressure, 2 MPa. Steering control valve. Steering control valve consists of 2 steering valves and brake valves. Respectively control the steering clutch and brake valve oil which is into brake booster. The function is to distribute oil from the relief valve to the steering clutch and brake booster according to steering operation requirements. Steering relief valve. The steering relief valve includes a relief valve and an oil cooling bypass valve. The safety valve adjusts the pressure to 2 MPa in the steering system. And the oil bypass valve prevents high pressure in the oil circuit of the oil cooler. Rated pressure of bypass valve, 1.2 MPa. Steering clutch. Steering clutch is wet, multi-plate, hydraulic clutch. It comprises inner hub, piston, inner tooth pieces, friction piece, pressure plate, butterfly spring and outer hub. Steering clutches are installed at both ends of the bevel gear shaft to control the direction of the bulldozer. The power transmission from the bevel gear to the final transmission is cut off through the clutch separation so as to change the driving direction. Final transmission. GTY160 series bulldozer final transmission using 2-stage deceleration. By using of spur gear meshing transmission, and gear rotation splash lubrication. The power from the bevel gear shaft and the steering clutch is transmitted through the outer hub of the steering clutch to the final transmission flange. To transmission the number 1 pinion shaft, which engages with the number 1 pinion shaft and rotates the number 2 pinion shaft. Power is further transferred from the number 2 pinion shaft to the number 2 large gear engaged with the number 2 pinion shaft, and deceleration is achieved. The number 2 gear is mounted on the hub, the chain hub is pressed onto the hub as well, the power is eventually transferred to the sprocket. Hydraulic pump. Type, gear pump, rated pressure, 14 MPa. Relief valve assembly. The relief valve assembly is pilot type and consists of 2 valves, 1 relief valve and 1 pilot valve. The pressure in the hydraulic system is determined by the movement of the pilot valve. The relief valve assembly is installed in the hydraulic tank, and when the relief valve opened, oil discharged directly into the tank. Lift and tilt control valves. The lifting and tilting control valve is a slide valve structure, which is used to lift and tilt the shovel head. Hydraulic oil cylinder. The hydraulic cylinder comprises a cylinder body, a cylinder head, a piston rod, and other parts. The cylinder is a device that converts the hydraulic energy from the cylinder body into mechanical energy for linear motion. There are oil inlets at the front and the end of the cylinder. When the oil goes into the cylinder head, the piston moves to the end, the oil at the end pressed into the oil tank. Similarly, when the oil goes into cylinder end, the piston moves to the cylinder head, to achieve the various actions of the cutter head. Chassis assembly. The chassis assembly formed by frame, guide wheels, sprocket, support wheels, tension device and crawler assembly. The power from the final transmission is driven by a sprocket and guided by guide wheels, support by support wheels through the crawler. The crawler assembly carries the full weight of the bulldozer and distributes it across the ground. The lower side of each frame is provided with a support wheel guard to prevent the track from being derailed by the entered rocks. Proper operation and precautions. Tips. Training. If you are a new operator, for your and others' safety, please get the professional training from Sinomach or agent before operating the bulldozer. Safety. Before operating bulldozer, please read the operation manual and be familiar with the operation. Inspection. Before using the bulldozer, please check the machine, climate, surrounding to make sure all are in good condition. Caution. Please use bulldozer properly according to construction site conditions. Precautions for switching on and off the machine. Starting up. Put the main power switch to on. Apply the brake. Adjust the seat and tighten the seat belt. Ensure that all the work attachments, blade and ripper etc., are on the ground. Put the gear on neutral position. Ensure that the control joysticks, for blade and ripper etc., are locked. Ensure that people around the bulldozer are in safe position. Set the throttle to low idle. Put the key switch to on, and the monitor will begin self-test. Switch the key to start the engine. In winter when temperature is low, start the engine after the automatic warm-up. Warming up. Warm up the machine for 5 minutes at idle speed. Unlock the control levers of the work attachments, and cycle the control levers. To ensure that the working oil runs through all the cylinders and pipelines. Check the instruments and monitors. Working. Observe the surroundings of the bulldozer to ensure clear vision. Raise all the work attachments, blade and rippers etc. Ensure that the walking control joystick is being pressed down. Release the brake. Change the gear to the needed position. Release the walking control lever to begin operation appropriate to the conditions. Shutting down. Steps. Stop the bulldozer in a flat area. Apply the brake. Reduce the speed of all hydraulic elements. Let the engine idle for 5 minutes. Put the key switch to OFF. Get off the vehicle safely with the assistance of hands. Observe if there are obvious issues around the bulldozer. Driving. Check before starting engine. Develop a habit to check before starting engine. This is good for the safety of both people and vehicle. Check oil or water leakage. Inspect around the vehicle to check for any oil or water leaks and other abnormalities. Pay special attention to the following areas: high-pressure hose joints, hydraulic cylinders, final drive, track rollers, carrier rollers, floating seals, radiator seals. If any leaks or abnormalities are detected, ensure they are promptly repaired. Check bolts and nuts. Check if any loosened nuts and bolts, tighten them if necessary. Pay special attention to air filter, carrier roller bracket and crawler bolts. Check electric circuits. Check to see if the wires are damaged, shorted circuit or connection loose. Check cooling water level. Unscrew the radiator cap and check if the water at the required level. Add water if necessary. Add coolant after the engine stopped. Fully add water into the water tank, until the water overflows, then start the engine and keep it idle for 5 minutes before checking again. Continue to add more water if the water level is lower than required. If the water added increased abnormally, find the leakage and solve it in time. You cannot rely only the instrument meter to check the water level. Warning. When engine overheats, slowly unscrew the water tank cover, so that the internal pressure of the water tank is released and then opened, to avoid spray hot water wounding. Check oil level in engine oil pan. When the engine has stopped, take out the dipstick. And check the oil level on the side marked engine stopped. When the engine is idling, check if the engine oil pressure gauge and water thermometer are within the normal range first. And then take out the dipstick to look at the oil level on the side marked engine idling. If oil needs to be added, open the injection mouth to add oil. When checking oil level, park the vehicle on a level ground. When adding engine oil, do not let the oil level over the H mark. When checking oil level, do not rely on engine oil level monitor only. Check fuel level. Remove the fuel tank cap, and pull out the dipstick to check the oil level. After completing work, fill the fuel through filter screen. Before operating the bulldozer, make sure there is enough fuel in the tank so that the engine fuel line does not become aerated. Fuel tank capacity, 300 L. Warning. When filling the fuel, do not make the fuel overflow to avoid fire. Check steering clutch case oil level, including transmission case and torque converter. Use dipstick to check the oil level. If needed, oil should be added through the filter screen. When checking oil level, please stop the engine first. When operating on a slope over 20 degrees, the oil level should be at the H high level. Drain the sediment in fuel tank. Loosen the valve on the bottom of fuel tank to drain the water and sediment in the fuel. Check brake pedal stroke. When the engine is running, the standard stroke is 90-110 mm, operating force is 15 kg. Operation methods and steps. Check the positions of various control levers before start. Adjust the seat so that the operator can completely press down the brake pedal while leaning against the seat back. Brake lock lever is in the lock position. Gear shift lever is in the neutral position, and gear shift lock lever is in the lock position. The blade and ripper should be lowered to the ground, and the control lever lock button should be in the lock position. Starting engine. Pull the throttle level to the idling position. Turn the key to the starting position. When engine started, release the key, and the key will automatically return to the on position. If engine is not started, restart after 2 minutes. The key should not stay in the starting position for more than 10s. When the fuel tank is empty and you want to start the engine, fill fuel first and then let the fuel fill the core of fuel filter and drain all the air in the fuel system before starting the engine again. Check after starting engine. Let the engine run at a low speed until the engine oil pressure is within the normal range. Pull the throttle control lever to make the engine idle at a mid-range speed for about 5 minutes. Do not run the engine at low or high idle for more than 20 minutes. If it is necessary to run the engine at idle, apply fuel loads from time to time or run the engine at a mid-range speed. After engine temperature is increased, check various meters for abnormality. Let the engine continue to run at low load to let water temperature increase. Water temperature between 74 to 91 degrees Celsius is the most ideal. Check the color of exhaust for abnormalities, such as abnormal sound or vibration. Do not suddenly accelerate the engine before the machine reaches full operating temperature. If engine oil pressure is not within the normal range, stop the engine immediately, and check for reasons. Operation when moving. Before moving, check around you, make sure it is in safe condition. Release blade and ripper lock button. Pull blade and ripper control lever, to raise blade and ripper 40 to 50 centimeters above ground. Step down the crossing part in the middle of the left and right brake pedal, put the brake lock lever to the free position, and then release the brake pedal. Release the gear shift lock lever. Step down the deceleration pedal to reduce engine speed, so that there will be no impact when the machine is start. Place the gear shift lever into position that needed, and then machine will start to move. Pull throttle control lever to accelerate the engine. Through the gear shift lever you can select any speed without stopping the machine. After reducing vehicle speed, change forward reverse. This can prevent impacting vehicle. Step down the deceleration pedal, to reduce engine speed. Bring the gear shift lever to the needed forward or reverse gear. And then release the deceleration pedal, accelerate the engine. Turning. Make a big turn to the left-right. Pull left, right, steering lever halfway, and the vehicle will make a big turn to the left, right. Make a small turn to the left, right. Pull the left, right, steering lever to the bottom, the left, right, steering clutch will detach. The brake will be activated, and the vehicle will make a small turn to left, right. Parking. Push the throttle control lever to the idling position to reduce engine speed. Push the gear shift lever to the N position. Step down the crossing part in the middle of the left and right brake pedal, and the vehicle stops. Pull the brake lock lever to the lock position, to lock the gear shift lock lever. Push the blade control lever and ripper control lever to the lowering position. To lower the blade and ripper to the ground. And then press the blade control lever lock button and ripper control joystick lock button. Warning. Park the machine on a firm and level ground as far as possible. And avoid do not parking it in a dangerous place. Stopping engine. Let the engine idle for 5 minutes, to cool it down. Turn the key to the stop position, engine will stop running, pull out the key. If you stop the vehicle immediately while the engine is still hot, it will dramatically shorten the service cycle of the engine. Never stop the vehicle right after working, unless in emergency situation. Operation in special climate conditions. When the temperature is too low, the engine is hard to start, the cooling water will frozen, it will cause disadvantages on the vehicle. It should take proper measures, and select the right oil and water according to the environmental requirements. When the atmospheric temperature is lower than 0 degrees Celsius, to prevent the cooling water from freezing, you can use the antifreeze fluid based on the lowest temperature. Before adding the mixed antifreeze fluid, thoroughly clean the cooling system. When the weather becomes warm, drain all the antifreeze fluid, except for the permanent antifreeze fluid, and clean the cooling system before replacing the new coolant. Be sure to clean the snow or water on the hydraulic oil cylinder piston rod. If it freezes into ice, it will damage the cylinder's oil seal. Warning: water without antifreeze should be thoroughly drained during the nighttime of winter, to prevent the parts from being cracked by freezing. Note: do not forget to drain water in the oil cooler and so on. Use standard antifreeze fluid. Never use methanol or ethanol-based antifreeze fluid, it may cause malfunction of engine. Antifreeze fluid is flammable, so be aware of fire. When the ambient temperature drops, the capacity of the battery will also drop. Also, the battery charge ratio will reduce, and the battery electrolyte may freeze. Maintain the battery charge as close as possible to 100%. And insulate it against cold temperature so that the machine can be started easily the next morning. Precautions: do not park machine on a slope unless in special situations. If you do need to park the machine on a slope, face the head of machine to downhill, and lock the brake pedal. When the slope angle is large, you can slightly cut the blade into the ground, to prevent machine from sliding. When the machine travels on a slope, the longitudinal slope should not be over 30 degrees. And when going uphill, do not travel backward. When you start the machine on a slope, step down the left-right brake pedal first. And then pull the gear shift lever to gear 1, while slowly releasing the brake pedal. When going downhill, pull the gear shift lever to a low-speed gear, and use the engine to reduce the speed. If engine run over speed, the brake pedal could be used to reduce the speed of machine. When operating machine on sloped areas of more than 20 degrees, fill all appropriate components with oil to H level. Warning: always travel low speed and straight up or down a slope. Traveling at an angle or across the slope is extremely dangerous. Do not shift gear or cross obstacles on a slope. When working on slopes, if the fuel level in the fuel tank becomes low, the engine may suck in air because of the angle or the swaying of the machine. If this makes the engine stop, the braking effect will be reduced, so be careful not to let the fuel level in the fuel tank become too low. Operating in water. When the machine is traveling in water, check out water depth and the soil under water first, to avoid accidents. If the water is too deep and the soil sinks from carrying the load, water level should not exceed the center of the idler. When operating in sea water or other corrosive water, wash the machine with clean water after completion of work. Operating on desert. When operating on desert or other types of dusty ground, try to keep the machine sealed from the outside world, and clean the air filter at any time. Bulldozing operation. Reasonably choosing the models, also the adjustment and operation methods of the blade according to the bulldozing objects is very important to extending the life cycle of the machine, reducing the operator's fatigue, and it will increasing work efficiency. The GTY160 bulldozer is suitable for the general operating conditions. The GTY160E bulldozer is suitable for loose soil. The GTY160S is suitable for operating in swamps. There are three types of blades: the straight tilt blade, the angle blade, and the U blade. They are suitable for different terrains and operation objects. The effective dozing distance is 70 m maximum. For long distance application, using a forklift is more economical. Cutting of hard soil or frozen soil. When operating on hard soil or frozen soil, using straight tilt blade or angle blade could dig more effectively. If the soil is very hard, using ripper could increase efficiency. Leveling operation. The uneven ground after excavating and dozing can be leveled by using the following methods. Fill the blade with soil, run machine at a low speed, and level the uneven areas when driving. Place the blade in a floating state, move the machine slowly backward to smooth and level the ground. Caution. Floating cannot be used on rocks, as it will damage the blade. Bulldozing sideways. When dozing sideways, use the angle blade. Warning. Do not use the blade to dig tree root etc. During bulldozing and moving, avoid sudden start, sudden brake and sudden turn if possible. Methods for extending machine life cycle. The life cycle of the machine, especially the walking parts, is dependent on the maintenance and operation methods. Therefore, remember the following points. Select different models with different types of tracks according to soil type. During operation, reduce track slip. If the track slips, reduce the load until it no longer slips. Avoid sudden start, sudden acceleration, unnecessary high-speed operation, as well as sudden brake or sudden turn if possible. Always operate the machine to travel in a straight line. Do not always turn to one side. Turn to left and right alternately and at the biggest radius. During bulldozing, if the terrain forms a gentle slope to left or right, backward the machine to the level ground and level it again. Do not continue to operate on the slope. Do not let the machine try to handle a hard object or an obstacle that is hard to handle. Or the front idler or sprocket will leave the ground. When operating on an inner slope, the machine should travel along the slope from top to bottom, and should not cross the slope. When traveling uphill, do not transmission backward. Before operation, clear the big rocks and other obstacles from the work site. Maintenance period. Warning. Do not handle electric systems in rain. When checking or filling cooling water, be careful of hot water may spurt out to injure people. After the fuel filter is replaced, exhaust the air from the fuel supply circuit. Never fill fuel after taking out the filter screen of the fuel filling port. Remember that there is high pressure within the hydraulic oil circuit. When you fill oil, drain oil performance check and maintenance, release the pressure first. The method for releasing pressure as follows. Lower the blade and ripper to ground, shut off the engine. Pull the hydraulic system's control joystick to each gear position 2 to 3 times continuously. And then slowly loose the oil tank cover or the hose joint. Before change engine oil, start the machine to raise the oil temperature to 30 to 40 degrees Celsius, then release the oil. When check or change oil, do not do it in a dusty location, otherwise the dust will mix with the oil. Before service the gearbox, take all the objects out of your pockets. Be careful with wrenches or nuts may fall into the gearbox to create a big trouble. Fuel and oil should be kept away from fire, do not use fire as light equipment. When change O-rings, gaskets or other seal items, rigorously clean parts surface and install them carefully. Initial 250 hours service. The following maintenance should only do after the first 250 hours. Engine, changing oil and the filter. Steering clutch case, include transmission case and torque converter, change oil and the filter. Hydraulic tank, change oil and the filter. Final drive, change oil. Engine valve clearance, check and adjusting. Every 250 hours service. Check the following areas, lubricate them and inject grease. Fan pulley, 1 place. Tension roller and tension roller bracket, 2 places. Oil cylinder bracket shaft, 4 places. Lift oil cylinder pin, 2 places. Tilt oil cylinder ball joint, 1 place. Support arm screw rod, 1 place of straight tilt blade, and 2 places of angle blade. Support arm spherical hinge, 1 place of straight tilt blade, and 2 places of angle blade. Sway brace 2 places. Various hinged joints of the ripper, 10 places. Engine oil pan and filter, drain oil and replace the filter elements. Gear shift oil filter and steering oil filter, replace filter element. Final transmission case, checking oil level and refill. Hydraulic tank, checking oil level and refill. Alternator belt, adjust tension. Water pump driving belt, adjust tension. Battery electrolyte, check level. Every 500 hours service. Engine oil pan and filter, drain oil and replace the filter. Breathe plug, clean all parts of the breathe plug. Fan belt, adjust tension. Every 1000 hours service. Checking the following areas, lubricate them and inject grease. Universal joint, 3 places. The half shaft bush of track diagonal brace, 2 places. Idler's tension oil cylinder, 2 places. Water tank radiation fin, check and clean. Steering clutch case, include transmission case and torque converter, change oil and the filter. Hydraulic tank, change oil and the filter. Final transmission case, change oil. Walking parts, check and lubricate. Turbocharger, check roller clearance. Every 2000 hours service. Check the following areas, lubricate them and inject grease. Equalizer bar shaft, 1 place. Brake pedal, 4 places. Breather of the engine crankshaft, wash. Turbocharger, wash. Valve clearance, check and adjust. Engine damper, check or change. Every 4000 hours service. Water pump, check if the belt is loose and if there is water leakage. Fan belt and tension wheel, check if it is loose. Maintenance when needed. Air filter, clean or change. Coolant system, wash the inside or change the cooling liquid. Track tension, check and adjust. Track bolt, check and tighten. End bit and cutting edge, invert or change. Brake band, check and adjust. Simple troubleshooting. Preparations for troubleshooting. Park the machine on flat ground and use the brake locking device to ensure that the machine is fully stopped. During the work, keep in touch with collaborators, others do not approach. Do not touch hot or rotating parts. Before assemble, clean the parts thoroughly, remove dust, grease and oil from the surface of the parts. Warning: when the bulldozer fails during the work, please stop and inspect immediately, only continue to work after troubleshooting. Engine parts. The engine belched black smoke and has no power. Poor fuel supply, check and clean the fuel line. Fuel filter is blocked, replace the filter. Valve clearance out of tolerance, adjust valve clearance. The engine belched white smoke. Excessive moisture in fuel oil, turn open the fuel tank drain valve and drain the water from the fuel tank. Engine oil/water mixed. Oil cooler damage, check and repair oil cooler. Cylinder gasket damage, replace the cylinder gasket. Engine water temperature too high. Failure of water thermometer or water temperature sensor, check and replacement. Water pump belt loose, adjust the water pump belt. Water pump damaged, replace water pump. The thermostat is stuck, replace thermostat. Low oil pressure. Oil pressure gauge or oil pressure sensor is damaged, check and replace. Oil filter is blocked, check and replace. Oil pump is damaged, replace oil pump. Transmission system. The torque converter is overheat. The oil thermometer or the oil temperature sensor is damaged, check and replace. Return oil pump of torque converter is damaged, replace return oil pump. Low internal pressure of torque converter, check if the relief valve and its pressure is normal, if not properly, clean or replace the valve. Low return oil pressure of speed change valve, clean or replace the pressure regulating valve in the transmission valve. The internal components of the torque converter are damaged, replace damaged parts. The machine move forward and backward feebly. Troubleshoot the engine and torque converter first, check and eliminate. Oil filter blocked in transmission system, clean and replace the filter. Pressure relief by abrasion of variable speed pump, replace variable speed pump. Pressure relief of variable speed pump, clean or replace the pressure regulating valve in the transmission valve. Gearbox is feebly in first gear. The pressure reducing valve in the variable speed valve has failed, clean or replace pressure relief valve. Gearbox seal ring damaged in first gear, replace the seal ring. Machine moving sluggish when the gear is engaged. Wear of transmission pump or air in the oil pipe, replace the variable speed pump or eliminate the intake point. Oil increase in transmission box. Hydraulic pump oil seal damage, replace oil seal of hydraulic pump. It is recommended to replace the hydraulic pump assembly. Transmission box oil and water mix together. The bottom of the water tank leaks, repair or replace oil cooler. Reduction in transmission box oil level. The oil seal on the back of the transmission box is damaged, replace the oil seal at the rear of the transmission box. Machine steering failure. Steering oil filter is blocked, clean and replace the steering oil filter. Steering pump wear, replace steering pump. Steering valve failure, clean or replace the steering relief valve. One-side steering failure of the machine. The brake belt is loose, adjust brake belt. Steering valve failure, clean or replace the steering valve. Brake valve failure, clean or replace the brake valve. Lateral axis hub seal ring damaged, replace the seal ring. Steering clutch failure, dismantle and inspect steering clutch, replace damaged parts. Oil and water mixed in rear axle. Leakage of steering oil cooler, repair or replace steering oil cooler. Rear axle oil level increased. The oil seal on the back of the transmission box is damaged, replace the oil seal at the rear of the transmission. Final transmission position. High temperature of final transmission oil. The clearance of the final transmission bearing is too small, adjust bearing clearance. Abnormal noise in the final transmission. Internal parts damaged in the final transmission, replace damaged parts. Final transmission oil level increased. Damage of pinion shaft oil seal, replace pinion shaft oil seal. Hydraulic system. Lift/tilt/ripper oil cylinder will not move. Wear of pressure relief of hydraulic pump, replace the hydraulic pump. Main relief valve failure, replace the main relief valve. Fall of the lift oil cylinder. Improper control joystick adjustment, adjust the joystick correctly. Internal pressure leak of the lift oil cylinder, replace the lift oil cylinder seal. Failure of piston valve and lift oil cylinder, replace relevant damaged parts. Check and eliminate the fault of tilt oil cylinder and ripper oil cylinder, refer to the lifting cylinder. Reduction of oil level in hydraulic tank. Oil leakage, check and eliminate oil leak points. Hydraulic pump oil seal damaged, replace oil seal of hydraulic pump. It is recommended to replace the hydraulic pump assembly. Oil temperature of the hydraulic oil tank is too high. Incomplete return of control valve, adjust the joystick or repair the control valve. Too much oil in the hydraulic tank, control the amount of oil within the standard range. Chassis section. Chassis excessive wear. Excessively tight the crawler, maintain correct crawler tension. The crawlers are too loose. Damage to the oil port of the tensioning cylinder, replace the oil port. The oil seal of the tensioning cylinder damaged, replace the oil seal. Crawler side wear. The four wheels and crawler are not parallel to each other, adjust till they are parallel. Electrical part. The whole machine is not electrified. Battery power loss, insufficient battery fluid or battery damage. Battery relay failure, replace the battery relay. Alternator does not generate electricity, replace alternator regulator. The engine cannot be started. Failure of start switch, replace the start switch. Limit switch is not in place, adjust limit switch to correct position.